Hey, this is Dean Hunt, and I'm with Seth Larabee, and welcome to the JV Networking Blueprint. Are you there, Seth?
I am here, Dean. How are you today?
I'm fantastic. Really excited to do this. A quick overview. Seth and I got together, and we thought we would share some of our very best strategies on how to network like a pro and get some very lucrative high-end joint venture deals. And it doesn't matter if none of that makes sense to you right now, or it's something that you've not done before. We're going to go over all of that and share our absolute hottest strategies with you. So very quickly, my name is Dean Hunt. I've spoke around the world. I run very successful online businesses, been on CNBC and all that lovely stuff, which my mother's very proud of. And it's the only thing that she really understands that I do, Seth. But and joint venture deals and networking and relationships have been a real integral part of my business and really fuel my business. So I'm really excited to share how I've done this, how I've got on, the biggest stages around the world and done deals with some of the quote unquote gurus and A-listers of the industry, and how I believe anyone can do the same in their industry. And I'm joined today with the infamous Seth Larabee, who, in my opinion, is the hottest JV expert and networking pro in the business world right now. He is absolutely making headlines all over the world when it comes to networking, and especially with social networking and events. So, Seth, can you share a little insight about what you've been up to?
Sure. Well, I've actually covered almost 10 now. Actually, it just was 10 this weekend. I was able to go to the last day of a small local marketing event. I had a chance to meet a few people. Unfortunately, I had a family thing happen prior to that, but I've been to about 10 marketing events within the last 2 years, 5. Actually 6 just in the first part of this year since the beginning of January. So I've had a chance to meet a lot of people and practice an awful lot and fail forward. I mean, it's not all been rosy, but, you learn a lot and you keep moving, and that's how you get better. I'm a member of a 15-person high-level marketing mastermind locally here in South Florida where I live. I've basically taken over Facebook, is what most people say, as far as my reach and, who I talk to and commenting in groups. And so I've really practiced a lot there, but, I've gotten good at networking on Facebook. I do not use a lot of other social media per se. Some people say Twitter still really does well for them. I just happen to grab onto Facebook, and it's done great for me. So, I've had an opportunity in the last year to really dig into the relationships, and I think a lot of it comes down to, and you guys, if you've never read this book or don't own it, you need to go buy it right now. How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. It is like the Bible of relationships. So just throw that in there.
Yeah, I would endorse that. I would say 2 things very quickly, Seth, before we dive into some tips and tricks here. Mm-hmm. Firstly, the interesting thing about you is that you kind of seemed, and I mean this in a good way, it seems like you came out of nowhere. So you very quickly became one of the hottest properties and one of the, the big A-list, well-respected guys in the industry. And I think the lesson there is that for anyone listening to this thinking, nobody necessarily knows me, I don't have the big personal brand, I don't have the quote-unquote celebrity and the contacts, I think you're proof that you can achieve that in a relatively quick time if you follow your advice. So that's great. And in terms of the book, I would highly recommend that as well. It's in fact, it is by far the best book I've read on the subject. So let's take a leaf out of the book's advice and talk less and dive straight into things. So we're going to alternate some questions and share some tips here. And so my first question to you, Seth, is, let's start at the beginning here. For someone who's new to finding things like joint ventures, which we may refer to as JV deals throughout this training, or is kind of new to networking to grow relationships in their business, from a mindset perspective, what advice can you give them, Seth, to people who are a little concerned about that, nervous about that, or are just getting started?
Well, I think the first thing goes right back to just what I probably should have saved the book for the question. So I think that the answer came before the question. But honestly, guys, one of the things that I did very well was prepare myself to come out of the blue. And although I'd been studying marketing for a number of years, because I've owned my own businesses prior to getting into strictly internet marketing this last year, was to learn what the best networkers and relationship builders do. And that book is over 50 years old. So it's not new. This is something people have been using for a long time. I think it actually came out in the 30s is when he wrote the manuscript. So it's been longer than even 50. It's been almost 100 years now. So, get familiar with what the best networkers and relationship builders do by reading that book. There are numbers of other books you can find on Amazon. You just have to search for relationships and, networking. And, once you start getting the idea that, it's not about you, it's about them. And I know, Dean, you're a huge proponent of that. It's getting to know people first. But just from a mindset, be prepared. Know going in that you're not just going to go and just start barking at people. You're going to build a relationship first. I think the mindset really comes down to preparation, just like it does if you're doing a launch or, if you're preparing an email message to sell something to your list. To know beforehand what it is you're going to say, what it is you're going to do, and that'll work on social media, that'll work in person, that'll work on a phone call or on a Skype call. That's it. I mean, be prepared, guys. The Boy Scout motto, I've lived by that, for the longest time, and that's really where I think that comes from.
Yeah, I would echo that. It's great advice. My 2 cents on this, Seth, from a getting started perspective and a mindset perspective is if you don't ask, you don't get. And too many people kind of get worked up in their minds, and I've been there as well. I'm sure you have. We'll have the annoying little voices in our heads that say, who are you, Dean, to go and ask, this big superstar to do a business deal or to do a promotion or to get in touch with them? They're not going to reply to you. And there'll be all these voices and insecurities that everyone, let's be honest, has those as well. And the reality is, if you don't ask and you don't put yourself out there and make these relationships, then it's an automatic no. It's no by default. So really, you have absolutely nothing to lose and everything to gain. And it's kind of like a snowball at the top of a mountain. It's going to be rolling, pretty slowly initially, but as you get, following this advice, and as you do it more and more, the snowball's going to get bigger and bigger, faster and faster, and before you know it, you're going to have, what Seth and I have achieved, which is just an avalanche of opportunities and deals and contacts and credibility in the industry. So that would be my advice. Anything you would add there, Seth?
I love the idea, and it's basically the same with anything. You'll notice, and this is something that I picked up, again, because I love psychology as well. It's another part of relationships. Your Rolodex, as we used to call it, a lot of youngsters have no idea what one of those is, but that's your network, is to actually just get started. Dean, that was a perfect thing. If you don't get started, whether it be, approaching someone for a joint venture or to, start your project, everything starts from the beginning. Take a chance, reach out. I think Tim Ferriss in his 4-Hour Workweek was phenomenal story he had about the people in his first class that he did where he ran that contest where he said if you can reach out to somebody super famous, whether it be an Oprah Winfrey or Richard Branson or something, and come back to me with a sentence or two, or a paragraph, whatever, that they responded to your correspondence, I will give you a full 100% paid trip around the world. And he said not a single person did it. Well, then he did it, the same class again the following semester. And another group of, youngsters were there, and he told the same story. He gave them the same contest, the same trip around the world, but this time he said one thing different. Not one single person came back to him, so he didn't have to give any one of those students a trip. And he said if they had just come back to me, even with a sentence that looked like something they might have said, I would have been obligated to give them the trip. He ended up having 3 people. So just keep it in mind that get going, give it a chance. don't ever think I'm not good enough, because Seth Larabee, a guy who gave me my prime example for you, Dean, was I was able to, send you a message that you responded and said, this sounds very interesting, Seth, but why did you pick me? And I was like, just because I've heard some great things. And, you who've been established in this industry, John Carlton, Ed Dale, number of highly successful internet marketers that are very busy, actually responded to me as a brand new person and brand newbie in this industry, and gave me the time of day, and actually spent Dean's was 2 hours long, and believe it or not, Ed Dale's was 2 sessions of an hour and a half. He had a 3-hour interview, and this was somebody who's very, very busy with a brand new guy on the block. So don't be afraid, guys. It's there for your taking. Just remember, it's a numbers game, and just reach out and be yourself. Be nice. I'm sure we'll get into a little of that as we get going.
Yeah, and the worst response you can get is just a no. No one's going to come and set fire to your house or kidnap
put you in jail.
Yeah, no one's going to kidnap your pet cat or whatever. So, there really is no risk. And like I said, if you don't ask, then it's a no anyway. So over to you, Seth. I think you've got a burning question here.
I do. I got one for you. So, Dean, what is the biggest mistake that you see people making with JV deals and networking in general?
The biggest mistake. It's a good question. I'm going to get a little weird here, so bear with me, Seth, and everyone listening to this. I think the biggest mistake, and I've seen this for the 7.5, 8 years that I've been in this business consistently, in fact, I see it every single day, is people trying to get married on a first date. And what I mean by getting married on a first date is people will approach, I'll use me as an example, people approach people like myself, I'm sure you get this all the time, Seth, and they'll send us, an email, a Facebook message, whatever their weapon of choice is, and straight off the bat, they will pitch. They'll say, hey, can you promote my stuff? Can you promote my products? Blah, blah, blah. I've had many emails that start, dear blog owner, or dear webmaster, or dear Seth. And, if you haven't taken the time to even know my name, that's not a good start to a relationship. So, and I'm sure you'll endorse this as well, Seth, is really build the friendship and the relationship first. And 99 times out of 100, some sort of deal or some sort of mutually beneficial agreement will naturally, organically occur. You don't need to force it or rush it. And, I hate to use the dating analogy, but, literally trying to get married on a first date. If you turned up and there was a lady at the bar and you kind of sat down and said, hey, I've got a ring, let's go get married, you're probably going to get arrested or at the very least a slap in the face. So, as crazy as it sounds, the vast majority of people, unfortunately, Seth, do this. If I had $1 for every email I've received this way or Facebook message, I'd probably have 10 or 12 spare $1,000 right now. It's just something that I see over and over again. So if you want a massive advantage just from one very simple tip that's going to put you in the top 5 or 10%, it's to really build that relationship and really treat it like a relationship, a real relationship. Put in the effort, build that friendship, build that trust, build that likability, and the deals will follow. So I don't know if you've experienced that as well, Seth.
Oh, I've had, and I've seen it from both sides as well. I mean, I kind of liken what you were saying, with the dating analogy to people actually sitting down in that bar chair and saying, like you said, hey, blogger, or hey, internet marketer or whatever. It's like, hey, hot chick, how you doing? I got a ring. How about if we run off and elope? It's like, ouch, no, guys, that's, and it's really as simple as, just thinking, again, like I said, being prepared, going back to that, Boy Scout analogy is, okay, if I was a successful person in this market, this niche, this whatever, this business, would I want to be approached this way? And if I got this response from somebody, this first initial contact, how would I feel? And it really comes back to putting yourself in the other person's shoes. And, you might not get a perfect response from yourself because it's kind of tough to do that sometimes, but I will tell you, the more you practice that, the better you'll get at it. And, regardless, it comes down to the golden rule. Do unto others as you'd like done unto you.
Great advice. Yeah, that's, people should write that down or tattoo it on their wrist or whatever. I don't know, whatever, as long as you can remember it. Fantastic. Appreciate that. Seth, I think we're both huge fans of Facebook, a little website that people may know about. It's doing quite well at the moment.
Just getting started, but hey, it's got a long way to go.
It's getting good. It's getting good. We should invest. But the little site called Facebook, you and I are huge fans of using that. And I've got to stress that I think 99% of the advice we're going to share on this training can be used on sites like Twitter and Google Plus and seminars and events and stuff like that. But I've got to ask, why is it that you use Facebook so much? And it seems to be your default networking tool. Why is that?
Well, for one, obviously that's where everyone tends to coordinate. And I mean, this day and age, I got on it in like 2009 at some point. So I was a late bloomer with Facebook compared to most of the marketers that I'd met since then, and it occurred to me that, wow, I can reach out and I can send a message, again, courting your targeted person, this person you'd like to get to know, you'd like to possibly promote for you, courting them in a proper manner. So instead of just shooting out a Facebook request for a friendship, I would accompany it with a message. And I'd say, hey, Dean, I've really loved your killer bunnies, man. I remember them years ago, and, you're known for those. But other than that, your strategies and your stuff that I've studied and your blog is great. And I would just love if you'd, accept my friendship. Hope you had a great day, Seth. And that would go along with, and they used to let you do that, and I hate Facebook for taking that feature out, is that now you actually have to send a message separately from your like request, which I think is kind of dumb, but that's
I agree.
But that's going back to, again, courting. And this is what we're talking about with the dating, is you're actually courting your partner. You're actually giving them respect, I think, is more of what this is than just popping in with this like or this, or with this friend request. You're saying, hey, here's why I think it'd be good for us to be friends, and so that's one thing I saw as the power. Now, the reasons why I use Facebook is because, when reaching out on a Facebook message, building that relationship, I was able to, by starting off on people's timelines, used to be their walls, I could, make comments and, like certain things that they put up for their posts. And I'm in a certain group called the Florida Marketing Mafia on Facebook. It's just for Florida marketers, and I'm known as the Finger because I like so many people's posts and comments. But, there's a strategy to it. And, and maybe at first I went kind of crazy and liked everything. But I'll tell you what, when they looked at their notifications, they knew who Seth Larabee was. So that's kind of one of the things I started out doing. But then you can send a Facebook message. And here's a little real deep kind of, I think, ninja trick that people don't really get about Facebook messages, is that if somebody's on Facebook, if they're a high-powered person in their industry, they normally have gatekeepers that check their email for them, that, check their mail, their physical mail. But on Facebook, they're usually their own person. And this was until the advent of people now hiring VAs or people to actually be social media managers. But even Facebook, most of the time, they still check their own messages. So if I shot out a quick message to introduce myself, and then when I was doing my interview series last year, I interviewed 65 people last year in the internet marketing industry, experts, Dean being one of them. They'd be much more likely to get that message and to respond themselves. And that's why people were totally blown away when I was able to reach, the major copywriting expert, John Carlton. And it was because I was doing it through Facebook messages. But I did it the same way that Dean said, very relationship oriented. One other thing I can tell you guys that's a phenomenal place to build relationships is Facebook groups. I'm in a number of groups. I've been put in so many more lately, and that's another no-no. I would say do not just go mass start putting people into your group if you form one, because you might make a few people upset with that because they get thrown into these things left and right. But, if you're in a good group, network, talk, ask questions, answer if you have some expertise in that particular area. Become known as the person in there that is that guy that lends a hand. or that asks provocative questions also. Because if you get known as the person who asks questions that a lot of other people may have on their mind but don't know how to quite answer, or are a little shy in getting on the group and asking, then you'll get to be known as that person who actually stirs it up and brings great answers for stuff. So I think those two things, just being as personable as possible, remembering Facebook is a place a lot of people collect, and using groups to your advantage. Those things right there will really turn you into a power networker on social media.
Fantastic. Yeah, and then the cool thing about groups as well, arguably cool, arguably annoying, depending on how you experience it, is that for the most part, when someone posts in a group, everyone else in that group gets a notification. So it's a great way of reaching people there. I would add to that, as you covered, Seth, Facebook these days is where everyone is. I remember back when I started, people used to say it was for kids and teenagers and musicians and all that kind of stuff, and people talking about their breakfast. That's not the case. I mean, literally almost everyone is on Facebook now, so there's no excuses. You don't have the excuse from maybe 2008, 2009 of claiming that you were in a very specialist niche market and your audience don't use Facebook, because every audience uses it now. Secondly, Facebook, for me, I hate to use the dating analogy again, but Facebook does the hard work of friendship and relationships for you. Because if you're on the first date, what happens? You're basically mining for information. You're asking lots of questions, and you're trying to find mutual hobbies and interests and passions and get to know that person. And that can take quite a while. And that's what friendships and relationships are built around. So you can go to someone's Facebook page and just it presents you with all that information. You can find out their favorite music, their favorite TV show, like information about their family. It's amazing, really. It just does all the hard work and it does all the research for you. So obviously, you use that information for good. I think that goes without saying, but the fact that it does that for you from a rapport standpoint, building rapport with people, you instantly know what they're most passionate about, what they like and what they're interested in the most out of everything in the world. And that, from a networking standpoint, is extremely powerful. So back to you, Seth.
Yeah, no, that's the one other thing about groups. I think that if you've spent any time in them, that you'll see, just an addition to the group strategy, why it's so powerful, is that if you post something on a question, or if you're answering somebody in a comment, that thread then gets put right back to the top of the timeline inside the group for everyone else when they're coming in. If they may not have seen it before, they come back and they see it again. So that's something else that's great, because the larger the group, and the more people actually get their eyeballs on it, and there you are answering a great question or asking a great question. Again, it's like advertising. What is the old adage, Dean? Most people want to see something 7 or 8 times before they actually purchase off of a TV commercial. It's a recognition thing, and that's where you just start getting. That's what I did. I just became known as that person people see on Facebook. And then when I became a JV broker, it was a natural succession that people are like, well, everyone does know him, so that's big, so you just want to kind of get out there and become known as that friendly person who helps whenever they can and asks great questions. And as Dean said, find out the information about them. And you can usually find enough information, even if you're not friends with someone, if they're in a group and you want to kind of touch base with them in the group or take it somewhere else, you can, kind of start a little conversation with them in the group, and then take it to a Facebook message. At least then you've built some rapport beforehand. Fantastic. Okay, well, I've got another question that I think I'll get some really good stuff from you. So, Dean, if you don't already have a lot of contacts, let's say you're just sort of starting out on the network building side of things, what would, in your opinion, be a good method for connecting with new people?
Yeah, this is a big deal, because, a lot of people are starting from scratch, and they're, like we said earlier, from a mindset perspective, they're a bit concerned of reaching out and putting themselves out there and trying to basically connect with complete strangers. So the way around that, and this is extremely powerful, is to get referrals. And I call this the reflected light principle. Some other people call it authority by association. And basically what it means is if I get referred to you, Seth, and the person that referred me is, say, Richard Branson. Let's go with an extreme example.
Why not?
Yeah, why not? Aim for the clouds. If Richard makes the intro and says, hey, Dean's a cool guy, you guys should connect and do some deals, then instantly all your red flags and all your mental radars are gone. They're down. They're like, oh, if Richard likes Dean, then I don't have to worry about him. He must be an awesome guy. Let's take this forward and see what we can do. And so any authority and trust and credibility that the person that's referring you has is reflected onto you. And it's just a great way of being introduced to people. And you can use this through, if you're at a seminar and there's someone you want to speak to, if you've got another friend who's already there that knows them, have that person introduce you. You can use it on Twitter, have that person send a tweet. You can do it on email, Facebook. It really doesn't matter. The reflected light principle remains the same, and it just removes any of the awkwardness, and it instantly puts you in a position of authority and credibility, which makes a huge difference and saves a lot of time. So I don't know if that's something you would recommend as well, Seth.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the beauty of and here's why I started out, guys. The strategy behind why I started with the interview series last year, because it's not like interviews are new or it was a new thing, and it's actually been overdone in many cases. People just do. But I had a unique twist in that my whole point for doing it was beyond just creating, a quick interview series to make a hit and, make some money and then move on. I wanted to actually start out with some amazing questions with an amazing topic that no one had covered before that's really missing. And that is in this industry to, actually teach people some very, necessary mindset and business strategies and tips to go with their marketing, because there's a ton of great how-to-do marketing courses, but not very many good things in the marketing arena or in internet marketing specifically on mindset and business strategy. So I went out after these guys that I thought could really bring some great stories to the table, and Dean definitely had some amazing stories, and so did pretty much every one of the other people had a great story to tell, at least one or two. And so here's the thing behind that is that by doing an interview, I was actually being perceived by the audience that as a level expert. So even if I was new, because I'm interviewing Dean or I'm interviewing John Carlin or I'm interviewing Ed Dale, it's like, wow, if he's interviewing them and he's getting this kind of great interaction and they're responding so well to his questions and he's giving feedback and they like he must already have that sort of level of expertise. So it's perceived expert. I think along the lines of similar ideas, that if you have an introduction from somebody to a list, that's why a webinar. If you're promoting a webinar to a list, yours or somebody else's, and you are the product owner, and that list owner says, well, I've got Dean on the line tonight. Dean's amazing. Here's the list of his accomplishments. Here's what he's doing right now. And he's going to give you some phenomenal information and some great content on how to do this. And I think you guys want to take your notepads and pens out and listen very, very closely, because when Dean says something about this, I listen. Now you've transferred that authority over. Now people are going to be more likely to listen to Dean as he's presenting, because the people that audience trust has now said, you have to listen because I listen. So kind of tying that into that little nice bow there, I think that authority by association is fantastic, and you definitely should be using it in your toolbox.
Yeah, it's interesting that you use the word perceived authority as well, Seth, because that's, funnily enough, that's exactly what I use, and it's so true. When it comes to the internet, people only have a very small snapshot of information about you. It's not like they're at your house and seeing you face to face and looking you in the eyes, and so the mind really fills in the blanks. It can very easily put 2 and 2 together and come up with 20 million, and so you can use that to your advantage. And like Seth said, if you have someone very credible in your industry that's doing a great introduction for you, or that you're interviewing that person, or you're connecting with them on Facebook and having a chat with them, or having lunch with them, then people are going to put 2 and 2 together and make all sorts of very positive assumptions about you. And that puts you in a very credible situation. I often refer to things like that and techniques like that as authority hacks. You know, they're a very, very quick way as to be perceived as an authority. And of course, you need to follow that up with value and quality, but it's a great foot in the door. So I would absolutely agree with that, Seth. Let's switch our weapons of choice. Let's put down Facebook a minute, give it a rest, because it's red hot the way you've been using it. And let's talk about people who perhaps are going to actual events and actual seminars. Can you imagine that?
Wow, you mean actually getting out of their chair and leaving the house?
I know. We say this, but Seth, I think, has been to 10 already this year, and if my throat's going, it's because I flew back from speaking at an event very recently. So we're both actually big fans, joking aside. But I know there's a lot of people out there who, their favorite way of networking is to go to, local chapters, networking chapters, and to events and seminars. So my question to you, Seth, is, in those environments, what's your biggest tip or tips for making deals and relationships happen?
Well, that's a great question, especially since we're getting back outside of actual, Facebook being the way that a marketer can reach people, the best way to start the relationship. And here's what happens. And this is coming from me now. I started off by meeting all these people. I have probably 2,300 friends on Facebook now. I started out last year with, maybe a couple hundred. So, it's just kind of exploded, and, a lot of people are now, approaching me. I usually was the one doing the approaching, but, I got to know people pretty intimately on Facebook. And that's because I dig in. It's kind of like you'd meet your buddies out to the pub or the sports bar, every weekend after a round of golf, and, a bunch of guys would just really become good friends. Well, I've been doing that with a lot of people on Facebook. And so when I arrive at these events, and what I found specifically now this beginning of this year, I made a pact with myself. One of my goals was to attend an event a month. Well, I've well succeeded that in that I've done, I hit my 6th one this year, just over this weekend, even though it was just for a couple hours to meet up with some people I'd been friends with on Facebook. And I was talking to a friend of mine, Ben, who's a chiropractor, but also a very successful marketer now as well. And, it was like, yeah, man, and we were all in a group conversation. He's like, when Seth and I first met out in Austin, Texas for the Traffic and Conversion Summit, it was like we were best friends already, and we were just, it's kind of like a family reunion, and you just ran into your favorite cousin, and you guys had known each other for years, and even though we hadn't known each other really that long, just because of the way that we interacted on the social media, now it was like just an extension of that in person. That's powerful. That's kind of where it goes to. But that's just one piece. Now, let's say you have someone and I met many people that I hadn't met on Facebook. Well, now I've got people I do know that can introduce me around. But let's take it from someone who's a perspective of a brand new person to their very first event, don't have a lot of contacts. I know, you guys are probably listening to this too. What you can do is, and Jason Moffat came out with a report years ago called The Truth Serum. And I'll never forget it because it's what got me started at the events in the right place. And that is the deals, the friendships, everything important is made around the bars and the restaurants. So if you're out there and you want to talk to somebody, one of the things I would say is to find somebody who you can chat with, get to know a few people, and then say, hey, have you seen so-and-so? Is he at the event? And if so, can you point me on where he might be? And then, get to know that, okay, cool, because they're usually somebody busy, somebody who's got a lot of, people around them. And then find out where they're going to head. Are they going to go to the event bar? If they are, hey, walk up and say, hey, John, and it's going to be use Dean. Hey, Dean, fantastic talk today. Or, hey, Dean, I've followed your blog for a long time and I love it. And I was wondering if you wouldn't mind, I have a question or two and I don't want to take up too much time, but I'd love to buy you a beer or, your beverage of choice and just ask you those couple questions for a few minutes. You will probably never find a person unless they're just so either, full of themselves, and I've maybe met one or two. But don't worry about those people. It's the other ones you want to talk to anyway. And they'll sit there and they'll answer. I mean, literally, I did that my first event last year. I spoke to a gentleman named Jason Fladley, and who's really climbed the ranks himself very, very quickly and is now very successful. And, you know, a couple beers sitting around at the W in Atlanta outside, and we spent practically the whole weekend because we just fell in, and then 5 or 6 other people would sit down with us, and we just have a great group discussion. And I did an interview with Jason shortly after that. So, yeah, I mean, networking at events is phenomenal. It's definitely revolved around the relationship building part, which is usually the cocktail, or, you know, if you get an invitation to go to the restaurant, definitely go, because then you have an intimate audience, and, you know, you're like sitting there for a couple hours and, you know, just talking. So.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that, Seth. One of the things that I've found, you know, and I'm going to hold my hands up, this was a mistake that I've made back in the day and learned from it now, but my biggest piece of advice from actual events and seminars and networking events and things like that is to not become what I call a business card junkie. And what I mean by a business card junkie is basically someone who's obsessed with getting business cards, who feels though that as soon as they've got the business card that they've successfully finished. Like, as soon as I've got 10 business cards, okay, all my networking is done and great. You know, I've achieved my goals. You know, business cards are really just the first step. And so I'm all for collecting business cards or phone numbers or email addresses, whatever it takes to follow up with people. But that's the key word, follow up. So get back home, kiss the wife, kiss the husband, whatever, the dog, and, you know, recover for a half a day or a day or so. And then get out your business cards and either call them, send them an email, just thank them for their time, point out that it was great to meet them, plant a seed. So what I mean by that is say, hey, you know, I'd love to do something one day, or I'd love to hear more about how we can work together. You know, just plant that seed in their mind and follow up. And you would be amazed, you know, in the early days, Seth, I used to go to an event, I'd come back with 45 business cards. I'd put an elastic rubber band thing around them, put them in a drawer, and then I wouldn't see them until I moved house 12 months later. You know, yeah. That's not networking, that's hoarding, and they're two very, very different things. One is going to really propel you and your business forward, and the other's just going to get you, you know, gathering dust. So that's, you know, follow up. Don't be a business card junkie is some advice I would give there, Seth.
Yeah, and to tie that in, if you guys obviously are in the marketing space, you know the power of email marketing. So you know that the power of getting a front-end customer, whether you're in local marketing, because that's where most local businesses leave their biggest money on the table, is they don't follow up with their customers. They don't find out how their experience was. They don't give them offers in the future. Same goes with networking. You know, it's like, let's go back to that lovely dating thing you were talking about, Dean, and use that example. What if you were to meet the most wonderful woman of your dreams? You guys, you know, happen to meet up at a sports bar, and you and your buddies were hanging, her and her girlfriends were out, whatever. And then, you know, you spent hours talking, and then you got her phone number, and then you never called her again. I mean, what good is that going to do you? It's the same exact thing. And, you know, one of the other things I will say, going back to Dale Carnegie, and again, this is why this book is so powerful, is that when you're at the event, when you do finally get some face time with a marketer that you'd really want to talk to at the bar, at the restaurant, whatever, remember that God gave you 2 eyes, 2 ears, and 1 mouth, and that's time for you to ask the questions and listen. Because the person who has the most time speaking, the one who's actually actively listening, is going to be known later on as the best conversationalist, even though you didn't say a word, but maybe to ask a couple questions. So I just had to throw that in there as well.
That's good. Good advice. I think you got a final question, Seth, that we'll end with.
Yep. Yeah, I have one more for you, Dean, and it's a good one. So,
bring it.
What is working really well right now in terms of networking with people effectively?
Yeah, I'm passionate about this one. I think right now what is really, really hot, especially when it comes to social networking, so Facebook and Twitter and Google Plus and you name it, But I think most forms of networking, but especially on the internet, I strongly believe that informal and fun is red hot right now. And the opposite is true as well, that corporate, kind of formal, kind of stuffy, overly fake and professional, I think that's out. I think that's really an 80s, early 90s way of networking. So here's my theory on this, and I've seen it so many times. If we use Facebook as the example, Seth, let's be honest here. Most people, and this is going to be shocking, most people, not everyone, but most people are on Facebook when they should be doing something else. Let's be honest, that's the case, and it's a habit, it's part of our day, and we enjoy it, and there's great value to be had there, but most of the time we probably have something else that's on our to-do list that's more important at that time on that day than being on Facebook. And I believe people are on sites like Facebook and Twitter because it's a great distraction. It's good fun. They're looking to be entertained. They're bored. Maybe they've not had their coffee yet or something like that. And so they're looking for entertainment. They're looking for a bit of a distraction and a bit of light relief and motivation. So with that in mind, it makes sense that if you want to really get a good personal brand and you want to network with people and you want to make those relationships and build your relationships in your contacts, then the vast majority of your messaging and your comments and everything that you say on Facebook and sites like that should be fun. They should be informal, they should be friendly, and you really should get in the mindset that you're chatting with a best friend, even if it's the first time that you've contacted them. That's really the mindset that I go with. And I think people really, really appreciate that. So I'm not endorsing that you be an amateur comedian or act like a clown or an idiot or something. I do a great job of doing that for you, but just be fun, be likable. Give people a positive feeling when they hear from you or when you're commenting, and people will really appreciate that. An example of what not to do is to be overly corporate and overly professional. Dear sir, I really admire your work, and I would like to get on the phone for 75 minutes with you. That's hard work. That's boring, and it's hard work, and people are not on Facebook to get more work. They're there to have a good time and get a distraction. So I believe, within reason, if you can just be a bit of light relief to people and be really friendly, really fun, and treat it really informal as though you're chatting with thousands of your best friends, which kind of you should be treating it like that anyway. I think you're going to reap the rewards, and that's how I get, such a lot of contacts on there, and that's why people are approaching me every single day and recommending me, is because we have that strong positive vibe and that connection together. So I don't know if that's something that you would agree with, or feel free to disagree with that, Seth, but it's worked phenomenally well for me.
Well, no, and especially since, Dean, that we're coming from the aspect of, how are you getting started on this, okay? And, I still, to this day, if you want to go to Facebook and look up Seth Larabee, it's just my name all in one word, no dashes, spaces. That's me on Facebook. Even if you want to just subscribe to see how I interact on Facebook, I'm posting, a picture with something funny in it, or I'm posting a cool video that I found on YouTube that someone else may have posted on Facebook, showing some really cool car or some, amazing invention, or, I'm putting a success quote that makes sense in relativity to something that happened to me that day, or whatever, and it's keeping it light, but it's also keeping it interesting, and I never fail. I mean, some of my posts that I've actually put out some provocative marketing questions in the last couple of months. One of them, actually, Frank Kern came and commented 5 times throughout that different thread, and I had over 135 comments on it. And I think, Dean, you remember last year when we were both getting ready to go to an event in Orlando, that I did a post, and I used very similarly to what you put on your wall, but I used a picture of the pool at the gentleman's house, and I had, I think 120 comments there. So it's about the interaction. That's, I guess, what it really comes down to kind of roll out my final say on this, is engagement and interaction is king on social media. If you can elicit a good response rate, people are going to, and especially, which I think they call it edge rank on Facebook, if I remember my experts telling me the name of it properly, and that means the more you like, the more comments you get, the more interaction you get on your posts, the more people actually see it now on their timeline because of how Facebook structures things, and I get that a lot because I tend to get a lot of interaction. And that should be your goal at first. Go out there, be fun, be interesting, and be that person that people want to connect with. And the rest, as we can see, then, the golden goose is laying at your feet.
Absolutely. Yeah, I would agree. And I highly recommend you do go and follow Seth. He's a very interesting young chap. So feel free to go and do that. If you're interested in my ramblings and rants, it's facebook.com/FBDean. So that's Foxtrot Bravo Delta Echo Alpha November. I've been watching too many cop shows on TV, I think.
Guess.
So facebook.com/FBDean. And my personal email, I don't usually do this, but my I'm so passionate about this subject. My personal email is contact@deanhunt.com. And so if you have any questions there or you'd like to get in touch with Seth further, what's the best way to reach you, Seth?
If they want to shoot me a Facebook message, I'm always, I think, Dean, I'm probably 16-hour-a-day Facebook guy, but being a broker and joint venture specialist, that's my work. So for me, it's not a distraction. Well, I do get distracted, but for me, it's mostly about using the Facebook for the networking so that when the events come up, so that when the launches are coming up, I'm on the forefront and I'm in front of everybody. But they can reach me also at reply to Seth, REPLYTOSETH, reply to Seth @gmail.com.
Perfect. So I know there's going to be a lot of people listening to this, and we have given some internet marketing examples and references and stories, but frankly, I don't think it matters what industry you're in. There should have been something in here that you can take and take your networking and relationships and social media use to the next level. So we'd love your feedback. This has been the JV Networking Blueprint with Dean Hunt and Seth Larabee. Have a great rest of your day.
Guys, enjoy, and don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions, comments, or if you just want to tell us how wonderful we are. We like that too.
We do. We have very fragile egos, so we look forward to that. Take care, everyone.
Take care.